it's James, and today we're going to talk about RV security. And as an RVer, security is kind of a big deal because you've got a lot of your stuff in your RV. And this even has happened to other influencers. I think the Wendlands were robbed out of their van once. And we haven't been robbed, thank goodness, but we have left and not done rides or not taken hikes when we got to the trailhead or the ride start, and we thought, I don't feel so great about this place. And we have just left. So I'm going to do something about that starting today. If you don't know already as an RVer, keys and lock security in the RV industry, not so good. If you've got an RV and you see another one of your model of RV at an RV park, there's a decent chance that your keys will open that door and that their keys will open yours. That's just the way it is. They don't use a whole lot of different keys and different locks. Some of the locks are notoriously easy to defeat, etc. It's a mess with security. So when we were in Europe, we found this product, HEO Solutions, and their HEO safe locks. It's a solution to the key problem, and they weren't immediately available in the US, and well, it turns out they are kind of available from a couple people here in the US, but what I wanted was something kind of comprehensive. I want to seal up like all the baggage compartment doors, the storage compartments. I want the main door lock, and I want the cab locks in the RV on our Ford Transit, all to be locked up with Deadbolt security. So they put together a kit for me, and I ordered it through a fellow in the UK, campervanstuff.com. I've actually used David before from Campervan Stuff to get European parts that I wanted for our RV here that weren't necessarily available. And this was a special order that he worked out with the factory. There's going to be 8 of the HEO solution locks, as well as the transit door locks. They're all going to be keyed the same, and it's a key with like 100,000 different combinations. I'm pretty darn sure there's not going to be anyone else at the RV park who can open my RV. So, starting to install that today. I'll give you links to HEO and to Campervan Stuff, and I'll put all that in a post on the Fit RV that I'll link. So there'll be links, don't worry. We're going to get started today. What I'm going to do today, hopefully, is just get these transit door locks installed. And these are done in such a way, that deadbolt will catch on the door of the Ford Transit so that even if you unlock the locks, like with the lock button on the remote, you won't be able to open the door. You'll see what I mean when we get out there. This is actually pretty easy to install, and it's done in such a way that it matches right up with the Ford Transit interior trim. Even if you're not handy, you got this, trust me. You need a drill with a 3.2 millimeter bit, which over on this side of the Atlantic, that's 1/8 of an inch. And a center punch would be helpful just to keep your drill bit from going zzz when you start drilling on the metal. You'll see all that when we get to it. I've got the van pulled up, let's get going. Here we are on the passenger side. I'm going to give you a quick visual as to how this is going to work when we get it installed. So here's the lock, and you see it's got like this nice little lip there. This all matches up exactly with the trim on the Ford Transit. So it goes right there is where I'm going to install it. And then when you turn the lock to extend the deadbolt, and you can see that come out here, there's a flange on the B-pillar that's like a little pinch flange. And that deadbolt will hit on that flange and prevent the door from opening. You won't be able to open the door. So if someone were to break the window, they could unlock that door, sure, but they're still going to have to crawl over the broken glass in order to get in. It's fantastic. So we're going to install it right here, and the first thing to do is just mark the holes. So let me just make sure I got that exactly where I want it, and I'm going to use the center punch to mark the holes. All right, so drilling holes into your vehicle never feels good, but here we go. And here, the plastic, I'm pretty sure I can drill into. There we go. Now, we have to put this little trim piece is going to be in there as something that the deadbolt's going to go into, just to avoid like just tearing up the seals and whatnot. So, what I need to do is take this seal and tuck it in behind here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little, you see how there's space behind there? And I can just tuck that seal into that space, right? There's a gap. And then I got to find the spot where this belongs. And then we're going to kind of put it in like that. That'll be the thumbnail for the video. You got to have fun, right? Boom. All right, it's unlocked right now, so I'm going to take the lock and extend it, and it pops back out. Now, I'm going to lock it. Can't do that. Now I'm going to go outside. The store is unlocked. Well, heck, even from inside. Not opening the door. So then to get in, we would have to unlock this. And now we can open the door. Okay, that was a success on the passenger side. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the driver's side. All right, there we go. Now, I don't ever really anticipate locking these while we're actually like in the van, like sleeping or something, because, you know, if something happens, I want to be able to get out through any door that's available. These would be locked mostly when we're away from the van, but we'll keep them locked so that we can't accidentally deploy them, and lock them only when we're like away from the van. If we're in here, I don't see that we would actually need to lock these. I think we're good on the front. So now I'm going to start working on the baggage compartment doors. I guess a lot of that is probably going to be pretty boring. It's going to be me figuring out where to position the pieces. I'll show you all that later, but first I'm going to take like a while and make myself a template that I can use to install them, which I'll share later on. All right. Okay, well, I thought about installing them, and then I just kind of went ahead and did it. And so now you can see I've got them installed. And this is sort of what they look like when they're done. Now, these baggage compartment doors, and I did 7 of them, were significantly more difficult than installing on the cab doors, which actually went pretty smoothly. Not to say that these aren't easy to install, but number one, and I have a long track record of this RV trying to fight me when I do projects, and each of the 7 doors fought me in its own unique way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through what I did to install it, and a lot of that will be particular to the Echo, but it just will get you thinking about the kinds of things you may need to be prepared to do when you go to install these in your own RV. Now, the very first thing I did is I took a bunch of detailed measurements, and they actually even give you a engineering drawing of the lock, and I made a template, and that template was custom made to the offset and how far back I wanted it set in the RV. And so that was invaluable in accurately locating the holes, and there will be 5 of them that you will need to drill for each of these locks. So that was step number 1. Then we're going to start with this one because this one was the easiest. This one went down the happy path. Okay, so you have your template, you install the template, you know, tape it where you want it, and then use that to drill the holes. And all 5 holes, I drilled 4 1/4-inch holes all the way through the door, and then 1 small 1/8 of an inch pilot hole for the center, which is where the lock mechanism will go through. When you've got those holes drilled, you'll need to then drill additional clearance holes on the outside, because there are some posts on the underside of these locks that you'll actually have to put into a larger hole. So basically what I did there is you'll need a step drill, which is like a drill bit that's shaped kind of like a cone. You'll need a step drill, and that works very well for enlarging the holes to get them to the size you need. And for these 4 holes around that the bolts go through, those need to be 12 millimeters or a 1/2 inch, basically. The center hole needs to be a full 20 millimeters or roughly 3/4 of an inch. And again, I just used the step drill from both sides to drill that hole. Once you've got that done, then you kind of test fit the lock in place, And then you will go on the inside and you'll figure out if you need any spacers. Basically, the deadbolt has to be able to clear the inside of the door jamb. So you'll need to figure out if you need any spacers there. And then once you've got that, kind of hold the lock in place and then mark the shaft of the lock, because you're going to want to cut that to the length you need. This is all in the instructions. I know it sounds like a lot here with me just rattling it off, but you'll mark that lock shaft, then you'll cut that off, and then basically you bring it back out and you bolt everything together. And a helpful tip is if you have doors that are like a sandwich construction, like on our Echo here, those doors will compress slightly. So kind of be thinking about that when you're marking the lock shaft. Those doors will compress, you'll screw them together, and then you install the inside of the deadbolt. There's just 2 bolts that hold that on. And then that's all it took to install this one. This one, when I got it done, looks about like you would expect. I wound up using one of the 4mm spacers there, and that just makes sure that when this deadbolt comes out, it clears the door jamb here in the back. So one spacer most of the doors only required 1 spacer. Some required more than 1, or smaller ones. We'll get to that. Anyway, and then those are the last 2 bolts you put in. That's all it took to install the lock on this Happy Path door. So now we'll start showing you some of the other doors, and I'll tell you what I had to deal with there. Okay, next we have these side doors on our gear garage in the back, and both of these kind of dealt with me in the same way. So I took the template, and again, the template is just something I 3D printed, and I'll make that available if anyone wants it. So I took the template, marked the holes. I discovered pretty quickly that if you want your holes to actually be, because drilling through here, your drill bit can wander a bit if you don't hold it completely perfectly dead plumb level and square. And so if you want your lock to look nice on the outside, that's where you should put the template, and that's where you should mark from. So marked the holes on the outside. And then as I drilled most of the way through this door, and I was using a brad point drill bit. And here's another tip. If you're worried about chipping out the fiberglass, you can take a brad point drill bit and run it backwards to scratch up the fiberglass first. And then once you've done that, you can just run it through all the way, and it'll be pretty clean that way. But inside these doors, when this RV was new, Winnebago had installed molly panels intended to hold kind of heavy gear storage. And in order to make sure they stayed, Winnebago had installed strips of metal on the sides of the doors. And so what I found when I got most of the way through the door is that my nice brad point drill bit hit the metal and wouldn't go through. And so then I had to switch to a twist point drill bit to get the rest of the way through the door on these. Now, the step drill, that worked fine because that was mostly going in the outside, but even on the inside, the step drill worked fine. And again here, everything was normal. I just used the 1 4mm spacer, and yeah, this one was not too bad once I inadvertently discovered, I guess, that there was metal on the inside surface of the door, which kind of threw me for a minute. Anyway, so that was those 2. This back door was also kind of unique. So I wanted to put the lock in the middle of the door, obviously, because, symmetry, right? But there was a handle in the middle of the door, like a loop handle that kind of covered up the middle of the door. And so if I had put the lock in the center of the door, it would have been behind the handle and you wouldn't have been able to put the key in. So that handle kind of had to go. So I removed the handle, and then what I decided to do is to put the lock in where one half of the handle had been, and then mount a new handle, just this little bar here, in where the other half of the handle went. So that's all it took as far as placing. I think this still just took the standard 4mm spacer on the inside, and it matched up fine with the door just using my template. Now, this door surprised me in that it also had metal, but that metal was on the outside, just under the outside surface of the fiberglass, because it is what they had used to anchor in the handle. So there was metal here and here whenever I went to mount these things into the door, so be prepared for that. Okay, now, this door, Mel's litter box door, this was a bit of a challenge. First, I did get it actually mounted sort of in the center of the door, and that's fine, but I had built some things inside this door, pardon the litter box, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to hit like this center partition, that sort of thing. So that was one challenge. The next challenge had to do with the deadbolt itself. So this door is built differently from the other doors, and that if you look right in here, just inside the door, there's like a metal piece of trim and a shelf. And so I couldn't extend the deadbolt because it was running into this metal trim. So I had to figure out a way to cut and remove some material there to make room for the deadbolt. You see the deadbolt is going to extend right in there. I had to figure out a way to, well, first mark it so I could get it where the hole was, because you can't be inside the cabinet when the door is closed to see where the deadbolt goes. So I figured that out, that was some tape. Then I had to remove material from this little piece of trim to allow room for the deadbolt. And then once I did that, I then realized that the standard 4 millimeters of spacers wasn't going to work. And so then I had to go to these two, I think those are 1 millimeter each, or just 1.5, I don't know, the two smaller spacers instead of the one big 4 millimeter spacer to get the deadbolt to fit down into that compartment I made. Then I also 3D printed a piece of trim to trim out that, so that because it looked pretty rough when I had finished with it. So I had to 3D print a piece of trim to cover up the rough edge of where I had cut the floor to allow room for the deadbolt to go through. So that was this lock, and Mel's got no complaints, right? Do you have any complaints? Now we have this one, the one on my tool compartment, and a couple things. So first, I don't know if you caught it over on Mel's, but when you've got a door that opens up versus opening side to side, the lock is going to need to run horizontally here in the neutral position versus vertically like it was on some of those side doors. That's just, I couldn't find a way to separate that long pin from the lock to turn it, so that's just a function of how the locks are made. So that was one thing. The second thing is that you can control, if you want, let's say you want to turn the key this way to lock, which is how I have this one set up, you can do that. Or if you want to turn the key that way to lock, you can do that too. You just have to flip over the piece with the deadbolt on it on the inside, and then the key will turn one way or the other, and that will control the direction you turn it to lock it. So with this one, I did use the template, but then this door is built differently from the other doors, and this inside lip here was not set back as far, and so I had to again play with the template spacing in order to get it to where it would close. So some of these shims that came with the lock, I have again 2 of the smaller ones instead of the one big one, but it took me several attempts to figure that out, right? You go to turn the lock and then it goes clunk, and so then you got to go try again, take it apart, whatever. Takes a little while to figure that out. But 2 of the smaller ones here, and then this one just locks. But the hardest one is I'm saving for last. Now this one, and this is where I've got my inverter, this one was a bit of a challenge. First, the compartment is constructed completely, oh, the inverter's cranking right now. This compartment is constructed completely differently from the others. The bottom of this, first it comes up like well into here, so I couldn't use my template here. I had to just basically go at it with a ruler and figure out how many millimeters up and down I had to put the lock so that it would clear this bottom lip, right? So that's one challenge. This is just a piece of metal that's screwed on. So, and it had this lip on the inside here. And basically when I would extend the deadbolt, and you can see where I was using like the deadbolt to mark things. When I would extend the deadbolt, it would run into this lip. And so I had to cut that away to make room for the deadbolt to go down. Plus, due to what I had installed here, I had to make sure that there was enough room for this lock body and that it wouldn't run into the inverter itself, right? Otherwise I would have had to put the lock over here or something. So a number of challenges on this one. I got it done, and then this one wound up with one of the larger spacers and one of the smaller spacers to get it to close. So that's what it took to do this one. And this was the hardest one. Okay, and that just about wraps it up for this video, but there's one more lock I want to do, because even the locks on, well here, on this door are fairly common. So what I'd like to do is get another one of those locks, the HEO locks, and to install it maybe here. But that's going to take some actual thinking. Like, it's going to take engineering work, because I got to know what's inside this door. Like, could I even drill through the door successfully to run my bolts? I've got to know what's in here, like will I have space to put a deadbolt and cut a hole to recess the deadbolt into? That's going to take some thinking. So that one's going to be like its own whole own project. But as far as the baggage compartment doors now, I'm down to just needing one key to unlock them, and I don't have to like look and pull out my iPhone in the middle of the night for a flashlight so that I can see which way I have to insert the key. I can just stick it in, turn it, and go. So I'm pretty happy. So there'll be links to all the stuff like my template and camper van stuff and HEO solutions, all that stuff in a post on the Fit RV that will be in the YouTube description down at the bottom of this video. So that should get you all the information you need. And if I've forgotten something and I leave it out, just ask me a question down there in the comments. And that's going to do it for now. We'll see you later. Steph's wanting to go paddleboarding and it's kind of a nice fall day, so I'm down with that. We're out of here. Bye.